GM and Stellantis' willful refusal to bargain in good faith is illegal. Unfortunately, many employers across the country are willing to break the law and incur the meager fines and penalties that result as just the cost of union busting.
The UAW, obviously, they're in contract negotiations with the big three automakers. Shawn Fain is doing weekly updates on the UAW's Facebook and YouTube pages, so those have been fascinating and really enjoyable to watch. He did the most recent one yesterday, and it was my favorite one yet. I really enjoyed it. It seems like every week he's kind of ramping up the rhetoric, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a little bit. I kind of cordoned off all of the, some of the bigger picture rhetorical stuff, cordoned that off to the end. So we're going to first start with how he has characterized, the bargaining approach by the big three automakers.
We gave our economic demands to Ford, GM, and Stellantis over 4 weeks ago because we knew there was a lot to discuss and we were eager to get down to business. The big three have a simple playbook when it comes to bargaining that can be summed up in 3 words: delay, delay, and delay. So a month ago, I sat across from each of the big three CEOs with your national negotiators beside me, and I delivered our demands. I told them that if they expected to drag everything out until the final days of bargaining and then try to settle everything all at once, they were setting themselves up for failure. I've told them repeatedly, September 14th is a deadline, not a reference point.
So there we go, not very not very good news from the big three, unfortunately. It doesn't seem like they're moving. It doesn't, and it's important to note that he gave them the demands 4 weeks ago, right? And these companies, they have millions of dollars, hundreds of lawyers, no doubt, maybe even thousands, working on this for the companies. And there's absolutely no reason that they couldn't have they couldn't be bargaining in better faith. They couldn't, there's no reason that they couldn't be doing this. They couldn't be doing this more faster than they are. And so let's see and he tells us exactly what happened with GM and Stellantis here in this next clip. Let's play that.
UAW family, I'm sad to report that the big three are either not listening or they are not taking us seriously. We are now 14 days out from our contract expiration, and both General Motors and Stellantis have failed to give us any economic counters. There's a pathetic irony to having these companies fixate so much on worker absenteeism and productivity when their top leadership have ditched bargaining and are refusing to buckle down and do the work of actually negotiating a contract.
And that bit that he said about absenteeism is really important, I think, and worth kind of sitting with, because that is something that the big three automakers are trying to hammer in the media. And one of the things that they said was, we've lost $200 million to absenteeism. And Jonah Furman, communications director for the UAW, he pointed out that $200 million is a fraction of 1% of their revenue.
Right.
To absenteeism.
Right.
So, there's...
And also, we have had a pandemic. There is there is a statistical impact of COVID-19 on your absenteeism rates. I imagine they're not the only employer that has seen higher than average absenteeism. What are they doing to help that?
Exactly. I didn't even think about that, but that's exactly right. The last contracts were negotiated in 2019. So this contract has been 3/4 of it under COVID. So of course you're going to have higher than average rates of, absent employees. But one of the reasons, another reason on top of that is because the majority now of Big Three UAW members are in the second tier. So there are a lot of employees that are only making $16 an hour. No pension, not good health care, right? So if your job is not as good as the Big Three UAW jobs have been in the past, and if your job is really comparable to several other employers in your area, you're obviously not going to be as incentivized to do your best at that job, to give more of yourself to that job. And what do we call that when, when there's a demand and a supply? What is it that people call that?
Something about a market.
A market. Huh.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
But that's weird because they are complaining about the results of the market, but aren't these people, are the CEOs of the Big Three are presumably not socialists, right?
No. In fact, quite the opposite.
Okay, that's strange. That's a strange thing to be complaining about the market.
Yeah.
But
and I gotta say, just an example that really comes to my mind is the same situation in the school system here in Huntsville with the privatized support staff. They would always complain that they couldn't find enough custodians and cafeteria workers and security guards and all these other personnel that have been outsourced to temp agencies. And it was, this like constant crisis of the absenteeism and the temp agency not sending enough people, or the people they send don't show up, or they don't come back, or, you get what you pay for sometimes. And when employers are treating employees like a second tier, well, some employees are going to treat the employer like a second tier employer, right? I mean, that's just common sense. So yeah, there's a lot of factors there, but I think you're hitting on something there, and I think you do have to factor in the pandemic as a big reason why you would see some absenteeism issues. But to Jonah's point, how big of an issue is this really? Right. How big of an issue is this really? And it's just to me totally shameless to go weeks without even coming up with a counter proposal, and then to gripe and moan about absenteeism.
Yeah, absolutely. 4 weeks, millions of dollars, hundreds of lawyers on this team, and they couldn't come up with a counter proposal for GM and Stellantis.
Were they
Ford
absent?
Were
they absent?
Right.
Like, were they being absent from their job?
Ford came up with a counter proposal, so it's not literally impossible, obviously, because one of the Big Three did it. We're going to talk about Ford's proposal here in a second. But so this is his response. This is Shawn Fain's response to a lack of a proposal from GM and Stellantis.
GM and Stellantis' willful refusal to bargain in good faith is not only insulting and counterproductive, it's also illegal. That's why today our union filed unfair labor practice charges, or ULPs, against both GM and Stellantis with the National Labor Relations Board. Unfortunately, many employers across the country are willing to break the law and incur the meager fines and penalties that result as just a cost of union busting. While it's important, we always defend our rights and seek assistance from the Labor Board in holding companies like GM and Stellantis accountable. At the end of the day, our strongest line of defense is each other and our ability to take collective action. That's why it's so important that locals across the country continue to organize rallies, practice pickets, and other actions. We need to speak out together with one voice against GM and Stellantis' illegal refusal to bargain in good faith, and we need to be ready to go on strike if necessary.
So that is, pitch perfect. The the willingness to use every tool available to you to discipline these companies for their bad faith and illegal bargaining practices, but also recognizing and educating their your members, the UAW members that he's speaking to, educating them about the fact that the government is not going to be the ultimate answer here. Because a lot of people will leave it at that. They will say, oh, it's illegal for a company to bargain in bad faith. It is illegal for a company to fire somebody for union organizing, right? And then they'll just leave it at that. Without explaining to these worker organizers or to their members that the law doesn't mean just a whole lot when the penalties are so little. So the real protection that you're going to have to build to actually protect yourself is worker power, is the ability to withhold your labor, to collectively stand up and fight for each other. It's not the government. But when the government gives us tools, we're going to use them to beat the companies over the head with. And so, I think that's a really a pitch perfect message there regarding, using the government. And you can imagine that the companies Stellantis and GM were not happy about that. Stellantis said in a statement that they were, quote, shocked by the UAW claims that we have not bargained in good faith. This is a claim with no basis in fact. Stellantis also said it was disappointed that Fain, quote, is more focused on filing frivolous legal charges than on actual bargaining, which is obviously not true, because who is it that has been at the bargaining table day and night? It's been the union members. While Stellantis' COO, the guy who put that statement out, is the guy that's been in Mexico, right? For the last 2 weeks, okay? So, I mean, really in a certain sense, the cojones on this guy is crazy because, that's just such a obviously bad faith statement. GM put out something similar. We heard from Gerald Johnson last week, the vice president of manufacturing and global manufacturing and sustainability or whatever. He said that the company strongly refuted the unfair labor charge. Quote, we believe it has no merit and is an insult to the bargaining committees. Oh, well, if it's an insult, then that's terrible. We have been hyper-focused on negotiating directly and in good faith with the UAW and are making progress. Well, not reflected in what's written on paper, which is all that matters in contract negotiations.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.